Well, there's been more progress made at board level for the top 50 to 100 ASX listed organisations than any other type of organisation, or even within corporates, and that's because the ASX, the Australian Securities Commission, have imposed a recommendation that organisations who want to be listed on the stock exchange have to include in their annual reports what their diversity targets for gender are, and if they don't publish it, why not? So that creates a feeling of competition, and if you're going to get leaders to aspire to being, aspire to their better nature, then creating a competitive environment is a really clever way to do it. So the ASX and the steps it took really did help shift the dial, where we have probably somewhere between 20 and 25% of board directors, depending on the organisation, being women. But what you find, unfortunately, is that sometimes it's the same women sitting on various boards. So maybe that change is a bit overestimated, but it's still effective change and effective progress.
From a board perspective, at the moment there seems to be, yes, an increase in the number of women being identified and actually introduced to boards, but what's happening at the moment is those women who are tried and tested are being identified more and more and asked to be on more and more boards. So typically you'll find particular women are doing 6, 8 boards rather than them just doing 1 or 2, and there being new blood coming through. It was interesting doing the Australian Company Directors course just recently. Still within the room for the course, there was probably a gender mix of maybe 70% men, 30% women.
I think we could stop punishing them for leadership behaviour. So when a woman is forthright and states an opinion and makes a decision quickly, she's often regarded as bitchy or hard or cold. When a man does that, he's decisive. When a woman takes her time about making a decision and reflects on things, she's indecisive, whereas a man will be thoughtful and considering the options. So I think the language around women in leadership could be changed very usefully. I think we should develop a culture of sponsoring women, just as men are sponsored by senior people in their workplace. So putting forward a talented woman with potential for an opportunity so that she has opportunities to do different things, to stretch herself, to go into that really scary place where you're not quite sure whether it's going to work. Women are no less capable of doing that, but they tend to be punished for doing it, whereas men are rewarded for taking risks. That he's being brave, she's being foolish.
Do I think that there's an argument for systemic change? Absolutely there is. So if there are industries, and there are whole of industries, and we see it now, there are great networks, Women in Super, of which I'm a part because I sit on a board that's involved in superannuation. There are support organisations for women engineers and women in mining, and they're great. But we need to have sometimes structural policies. The massive employers, there's been some marvellous work done in the Australian Defence Force around not only gender inclusion but also around getting rid of completely inappropriate workplace behaviour and practices. We should be seeing it in government. We should see more of it across the private sector and across industries. So I think it's an individual thing. I think it's absolutely beholden on an individual CEO to be able to say, my organisation wants the benefit of diversity and of great talent, irrespective of the way that's packaged when it walks through the door.